Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to puff him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Oh, you're on mute, Jimmy, and there's no fade.
We literally can't hear you.
Do I got to
I
take
muted
over?
myself. Did I
There
mute
we go.
How is that
myself? right off
possible?
the-
We were
Yeah.
all just talking.
Absolutely hussed up. You know why? Because I just grabbed my microphone as I went to start singing. Anyways, what I said was, it's the kids' table at Thanksgiving, everybody. It's me, it's Bobby, it's Noah. The Boomers are in bed, apparently. Even though we had an early one tonight, they couldn't stay up for this one. We're going to
This is
break
a
it
fast
down.
one, too.
It was a fast one. It's not even 9:30, and we're already buzzing. It's the Celtics win their 42nd game of the year over the Bobby Manning Toronto Raptors, 111-99. A lot of the OGs know, Bobby. A lot of the OGs know that you are like, you could actually be the next Trudeau up there in Canada. You are massive in Canada. When the show started, the Toronto fans were all about Bobby. I don't know if that's fallen off a little bit, guys. I got to address this. Where's the hard hat, Jimmy? I got to address this.
They're show themselves, Jimmy. And you know what?
You don't wear the hard hat for a game against the Raptors.
My new team is the next team the Celtics are going to see. I love that Pistons team that's coming up. We can get to them
Detroit.
later.
Okay, that's going to be we'll talk about the Pistons maybe to wrap. We can't do an hour on this Celtics Raptors game. There were some interesting things to talk about for sure, but at the end of the day, the Celtics beat up on a team. I mean, I shouldn't say beat up. The Raptors hung around. They kept it interesting at least, but it felt like the Celtics were kind of in control of this one from the start. Great game from some of the usual suspects. Jason Tatum, nearly a double-double in the first half. You had Derek White come up with some massive shots there in this game. Jaylen Brown contributing. And Noah's guy, Peyton Pritchard, off the bench. We'll start with Noah. Ladies first on the show. We're gentlemen here, Bobby. Noah, you got an even major big takeaway from this one that you're going into the show with today?
I think the first thing is just they were pretty shorthanded. No Drew Holiday, no Luke Cornett. Porzingis, another weird late scratch that was a second before the game. He gets added to the injury report with an illness, very reminiscent of Tatum versus Orlando a couple of months ago. And I honestly feel like that helped them a little bit, because this is exactly the kind of game you might overlook. A team that's not great. You've won 5 in a row. You've just played against a couple playoff teams. You're about to play against another few playoff teams. But they were down a bunch of people and they had to kind of figure it out from the jump. And I thought that helped them get started on the right track. Plus, not to mention the fact this was the same Toronto arena that they had their worst loss of the season against. Derek White recently mentioned that was his personal low. So I think they had a feeling of wanting to come out there and have a better start. And they, from the beginning, looked like they had a level of focus that waned throughout the game, but had the right mentality. So I enjoy watching these kinds of games more than seeing them at full strength versus a bad team. At least there was an interesting dynamic here,
We still got people in the chat asking about Joe Sway, Jimmy.
What about Joe Sway? Joe Sway's doing his thing in OKC. We got Noah here.
It's funny because every day there's a new person that finds out Joe Sway is gone.
Yeah.
It'll be 5 years from now.
Guys, yeah, we're halfway through this season here. Where have you guys been if you're asking us about Joe Sway? Joe Sway is with us in spirit. Joe Sway watches. He checks in once in a while. He's actually been on a show or two. But
he had a big podcast the other day.
He's covering the OKC Thunder. He still get the podcast with Maxwell too, the Cedric Maxwell podcast. So everyone can get your Joe Sway fix for sure if you still want to. But we're riding with Noah. We're riding with Noah for the Garden Report right now. So Noah, thank you for joining us on this show. Please block out the haters. It's not an easy job.
They weren't hating. They were just wondering where Joe Sway was.
No, they were hating. Trust me, they were hating. Bobby, hit me with something.
This was fun. Right from the start.
I saw you tweeting. This is like Derek White level joy coming out of you today.
Yes. I had a lot of fun on Sunday because it was just a great win. And then this one, I almost feel like they were just, not to put it this way, but fooling around. Like, they just came out in this game with the headbands. Tatum's playing center. They're running all these wacky lineups. JD Davison's in there in the third quarter. And like Noah said, that's when they're at their best. There's no real pressure. There's no expectations. Everybody's able to play a little more free. Tatum and White are running their two-man game from the opening possession there. And those two were just awesome throughout this game. And it got sloppy. They had a lot of turnovers, especially later. There were some bad shots throughout. And there's a ton of stuff you can nitpick from this one. But when you're down Porzingis, Holiday, Cornette, as well as Porzingis with the scratch, there's no expectation. And so all you have to do is just go out there, keep them at arm's length, not to do anything too stupid, beat a team that you're supposed to beat, and everyone's going to be feeling good about it. And they probably need more nights like this down the stretch. I know that they probably want their regulars. I forgot Al. I know they probably want their regulars out there together and build chemistry with those guys and all that, but some guys need rest. Jalen tonight, we'll get to him. Didn't look like he's at his best health right now. You get Al off the court, you get Porzingis off the court. Maybe those guys can go tomorrow now in a more important game, and you still win though. And we talked about it. How many times did they do this last year? We haven't seen it as often this time, where you're just sitting guys and resting guys and playing bench guys, and it looks great. This was just like on Sunday and the blowout before it in Philly, a game right out of last year where your 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th guy are coming off the bench and doing some stuff, and Tatum's tying it all together, and you still win. It was fun.
Noah, anything? Yeah,
I was gonna say no. I always love opportunities to just see guys we don't usually get to see. Also, like we talk about Baylor Shireman, we talk about Jordan Walsh, but it's very rare, especially in the last few months, that they've actually gotten some stretches. And it's you can't conclude too much in any direction from these types of limited stints. But it's good also for morale, I think, because these are guys that are prepared to play every single night, but usually don't. And they're supposed to stay ready, but maybe 6 months pass and none of those opportunities actually occur. And so giving them a chance tonight to kind of showcase, like, okay, if you think you're not going to go in, like, you never know what might happen. And Torrey Craig probably wasn't prepared to start that game, or he didn't expect that he was going to start. But it's just good from a morale
kind of felt that
way and got right out there.
Yeah. So yeah, I personally, and I always enjoy watching those guys. But yeah, their reality is that what made last year's teams great is that they didn't lose these kinds of games. They really didn't. Like, that was how they had a 13-game lead in the East all year. And this year, they're not going to be able to string together like that type of cushion. They're probably not going to catch up to the number 1 seed. Their seeding is pretty, like, I'd be pretty surprised if they don't end up the number 2 seed. I feel like they're pretty safe in both directions. But you just want to show that your team, like Derek White said after the game, the standard's the standard, right? Like, you want to show that that's true. And it's not about Tatum and Brown going off. It's not about whether or not Porzingis and Al Horford play. Like, if you're on this team, you're in this system, you're going to beat the Raptors. Like, that has to be the way that they approach things. And I thought that you saw that for the most part, minus some stretches where they looked a little clunky.
And yeah, to the point about the morale boost, Jimmy, I noticed that at the end there when they called that timeout after Kate went on the floor for the rebound, Joe was on things in this game in a extra way than we even usually see here. The timeout there, the timeout after Craig's rebound, you don't normally see those from him. And I'm wondering if he altered that coaching approach a little bit just to give some of these bench guys a lift for making big plays, for making good rebounds. They're playing small ball out there. It's something we don't usually see. And I think we've given Joe a lot of credit for this year. The experimentation, it's been strong. I feel like they've tried anything you could possibly imagine they've gone to. And he was on the radio last week talking about how they don't want to get into a situation come playoff time where they need to go to something that they haven't tried. And I don't think we'll see Tatum at center or whoever was playing center in that group with the small ball throughout this game. But his ability to switch to that on the fly, make things work offensively and defensively, and just be on top of stuff. There's a great 2-for-1 at the end of third. The timeouts were awesome in this game. Obviously, the rotations were pretty good too, bringing in Cade off the bench and finding some spots for other guys. I like the White, Tatum, Hauser, Shireman, and I think Pritchard was out there with that group too. And Pritchard was awesome in this game as well. So he's talked about it before, Noah, that he really wants to coach those end of the bench guys, that he wants to give them a ton of support when they get those opportunities. And even though you got some mixed results from those guys, none of them were spectacular here. they all played a role in this game that led to some good consistency between the starters and the bench. The Tatum minutes were plus 20. Even the worst bench minutes in this one were only -4. And you're going down to Walsh and Davison and Shireman. I mean, you're talking main guys at that point, and they're still pretty competitive with not a good Raptors team, but not a bad one either.
There was a stretch where the lineup was like Tatum and then the main guys for a few minutes there. And I think it was Tatum, Davison, Shireman. I think maybe Craig was in the game, and Kada. And it was just like, in what world did anyone ever expect that to be, the guys coming in off the bench? But it was one of those games, you had a number of guys out tonight. And I think that's maybe why some people were clamoring for the hard hat. But without Porzingis, without Horford, Holiday, Cornette, I mean, you were smaller off the bat. Craig comes in, at least to start the game. He's out there. I think it was Pritchard that started the second half. So another adjustment that Missoula was able to, instead of Craig, another adjustment that Missoula made. And maybe we'll talk about Craig in a little bit. I don't want to get too down right off I don't want to scare Noah off the show and go negative too soon. But to your point, Bobby, they played a lot of the deep bench guys tonight. No, I wouldn't say anybody really shined out of that bunch. Obviously not including Pritchard, and Kada did some things, but 3 quick fouls from him in the first half. So you didn't really get probably what you wanted out of Kada in this game. In an opportunity, really a real opportunity for him. And he hasn't really gotten many lately. And to see Craig starting over him tonight, probably not a great sign either. And I'm not even going to mention Tillman, rest in peace. Unfortunately, Tillman not playing tonight is might be the kibosh on his time in Boston. But we'll
even the trade deadline passed. What are you talking about?
They're just gonna send him home.
We just might not ever see him again. We just might not ever see him. That's fine.
He was hurt, Jimmy. I think that was why he didn't play.
He was hurt? Okay, because it said coach.
Yeah, he's been out the last few games, and I think they just wanted to make him available for this one because they're down all their bigs.
Got it. Okay, so it's just.
But I mean, you're right in the sense that he's fallen way out of the rotation. Yes.
What I want to talk about is.
Forever.
I want to talk about Tatum to start with. We already mentioned him a little bit. He was out there with the bench unit a couple times, and when he wasn't out there, I think it was was at the beginning of the second quarter when he wasn't in the game, and that's when Toronto went on their run, cut it close again. And it just feels like, and again, not taking anything away from the other starters who certainly had solid performances tonight, but it just feels like Tatum right now is in control out there. 19 points tonight, 11 assists. He had 5 rebounds at halftime, ended up with just 6. So again, it's kind of like, if he really had wanted to, could he have ripped down a couple of meaningless boards? Probably. 9 assists at halftime. Just feels like he's got his most all-round game that he's really ever had in his career. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, the playmaking that's been taking shape recently.
Yeah, he was kind of cold there towards the end. I think he had a really good first half and an okay second half. But just in general, I agree that I think you're just seeing on a nightly basis that he can easily finish with 10, 12 assists, where that felt like back even just a couple of seasons ago, like that would not be
right.
Not even be in the cards. And I think part of it is just he doesn't feel the need to force the issue, but he's just become a much better. Like every time I ask one of the players about like making the right pass, they always correct that phrasing to just making the right read. And like sometimes that's not a pass, sometimes that is a shot. And today he overpassed a couple of times. That's why he had a few turnovers.
6.
6 turnovers. And I think a few of those were dead ball, but he had a few where like he drove to the basket and threw it to Hauser to 3-point line and like he got picked off. And so he's almost, I don't want to say he's overpassing, but he's just so comfortable making that play now. And I do think that is the Celtics at their best. And they didn't shoot great tonight. They were 31%, or what did they finish on the game? 29% from 3. So like that's part of his assist numbers are going to depend on how well they shoot. But I think you're just seeing his approach is just like so dialed in, and it does elevate everybody around him. And that's the version of him that I think is just the best for the Celtics in the long term in the playoffs. Like in the finals, that him being forced to be a playmaker was a great thing. So I like seeing it on nights like this, even when he has less pieces to work with, right? He doesn't have Drew Holiday and Al Horford. He doesn't have a lot of those guys that have helped him, be that primary playmaker, and still he made it work.
Yeah, you mentioned the group he was out there with, Jimmy, with Davison and Shireman and all those guys. The fact that he can glue together those lineups and continue to drive winning minutes, no matter who's out there, for the most part, that's the real luxury with him right now. And they've done that consistently throughout different units. And I've stressed this a couple times since the first half ended there before the break. I love that they're letting him play the full first again and the full third and letting those minutes extend. Now it's the balance between too many minutes for him right now. Would he hit 40 in this one again? I mean, they're riding his productivity right now pretty hard. And you do want to get to a point where you can ease off that a little bit. The non-Tatum minutes, the first half ones were pretty rough there that you mentioned, Jimmy. The second half ones with Brown at the, I think in the third there before he came out, or start of the fourth rather when he came back, they weren't awful. And I know John brought him up the other day, and they weren't amazing in that New York game, but they are still plus 10 net rating with Brown on the floor and Tatum off this year. So they're not falling apart with Tatum off the floor. And if Brown can get them through those early fourth quarter minutes, the second quarter sequence that you'll see that goes a little longer after Tatum plays the full first there, they'll be all right with this rotation, I think. And we had a lot of debate earlier in the year, Noah, like, oh, Jalen can't find his footing early. That's his role that he's used to. You know, how do they balance that stuff? And I feel like when Tatum's moving the ball and thinking that pass first mindset, it doesn't matter as much because Brown's still going to get that run, maybe in a different circumstance than he's used to, given it's the start of the second or start of the fourth. But he's still going to get his ball time. Tatum's still going to be looking for him. He had a couple of assists to him early in that second half, in that first half. And it's just going to work well because the worst thing that they can do is undercut how well Tatum's playing this year. Like, you have to have him in a rhythm. You have to have him rolling early and often in these games. And you need to build his confidence and his connectivity with everybody here too. So I don't know how you feel about it, Noah, but I love the extended Tatum minutes at the start of the first, start of the third, even a little deeper into the fourth if they need to do it.
I don't really care, honestly. Like whatever, when it works, it works. Like if they're up by 10 at the end of the first quarter, however they got there, makes sense to me. But I think that I've seen it go both ways where Tatum playing the full first works. Honestly, like the more those guys play, the better. Right now, I feel like a night like tonight, like
it's about the usage.
You probably wish Tatum didn't play 40 minutes. In this kind of game on the first hand of a back-to-back, but he did, and they needed him tonight. But yeah, I think this whole debate around, and I know we've asked about it, and I think it's been an interesting subplot to the season because it's one of the few things that we can see as far as dynamics changing and things. But I don't know that I even have a strong opinion on whether or not I want Tatum to play the full first, or they split it, or one goes in for the first 9 minutes, another finishes the game. Like in the playoffs, they're both going to play 40 minutes a night, and it's going to be less of this regardless. I will say though, that to Brown's credit, that I feel like his shot has been off for really most of the season, and it was off again tonight. And he still has found a way to be impactful in these moments. Like he finishes with 24 points tonight on 10 of 18 shooting, and he didn't have it. I felt like he didn't have it the other night. Like he's finding ways to still put up these points and be efficient and be effective. Even if I know that he has the plays that frustrate people, but if you look at his stat line tonight, like, he had a good game. And I think that he's been able to do that regardless. And so I don't know. I think that what they have right now works, and there's going to be nights that is one of their nights more than the other. I didn't really feel like it was really either of their nights that much tonight. Like they both were fine, but neither of them were really at their peak. But they did enough in this kind of environment. They're going to need to be better against a better team.
I thought we got a first half stretch. Yeah. You had the Browns.
The first half was great. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I think the whole team kind of just got a little sloppy in the second half.
Yeah, but that start of the fourth was important, and we'll see what comes out about his health. Probably nothing, but he misses the last 8 of the third quarter. He sits in crunch time, or whatever you want to call that, the last 3 minutes there. But the start of the fourth, again, Tatum's off the floor. It didn't go great in the first half when that happened, and he's able to get, after hurting himself, evidently there in the third, into a nice post move, into a nice, finish off 2 feet there inside, and drove them through that early fourth quarter stretch and kept that lead intact. So that was important. And they were both timely in this game, even if they didn't play complete games, Jimmy.
Yeah, I thought that, and I agree with Noah that the shot hasn't been there for Brown, but I think that the aggressiveness has been there. And I thought tonight he made some really good moves to the hoop. I thought he had I remember at least one nice putback that he had. So I thought he was physical, and yeah, he hurt himself a little bit out of control, driving to the hoop, spin move, dribbled into some traffic, like kind of a classic turnover Brown that you would envision. But then he took himself out of the game there, limped off it looked like it was, can't remember if it was, I think it was his left leg, but I don't know if he just tweaked something or what it was. But I gotta give him credit for the level of compete that he had tonight, because we've seen it with guys before. The shot's not there, and they start to take plays off, and they just get in their own feelings and whatnot. But 24 points tonight, still fairly. I mean, 10 of 18 from the field. That's pretty damn effective when you're still going over 0 of 5 from 3. So all in all, a solid night from Brown. But I thought the player of the second half was Derek White. I thought what he gave them, a couple of massive blocks in that second half for White. Obviously, everyone knows he's a great shot blocking guard. But then he had a couple of big shots in that fourth quarter to keep Toronto kind of at bay, keep them within that 10-point range there when Toronto was trying to make some noise. He had a nice drive to the hoop, and then he hit a big three. So you'll see right there on our graphics here, 22 for White, 7 of 15 from the field, 6 3-pointers tonight for him, 5 assists, 3 steals, and then those 2 big blocks that we saw in the third quarter.
And
Seems
there was
like
a great play
getting back.
late in the fourth, and I'll add it to the list of great Joe things from this game. Got down to 7. Shed had just blocked White, and they run this great inbounds play to Keita that White tossed up, and he had the same alley-oop out of an inbounds in the Knicks game too. A game-saving play there. So there were a couple inbounds from White beyond all the threes and the blocks and all the stuff you mentioned in this game that were just phenomenal. And he's, like you've mentioned, wrote about Noah, back to himself. And when that happens, they're borderline untouchable because he just adds so much to what everybody else is doing. And he connects in a way. Like, they didn't have a center tonight, really, outside of Keita. And he's the one screening. He's the one passing. He's the one moving and redirecting the offense. And, of course, hitting the shots, too, at the end of a lot of these sequences. So flexible, so versatile. Great to watch, especially with the headband.
You can just see, I know
Headband White.
I've overdone this Joy thing by now, but you can just see he's playing. He just has a completely different energy around him. Like, it really is just the shots that he's looking for, everything about just the way that he's moving on the floor. It's one of the, like, it's hard. Other guys, you don't really see that. You don't see, like, on their face how they're doing. Like, Jalen always has the same face. Tatum always has the same face. I feel like with Derek, he kind of wears it on his sleeve. And on a separate note, just saw this on Twitter, but Darko, the Raptors head coach, this is what he had to say about Tatum after the game. He said that guy is the best player on the best team in the NBA, and I don't think that he gets enough credit for what he does on both ends of the floor. Amazing player. I'm a really, really big fan of his. So,
a lot of Tatum love this week.
A lot of like narrative stuff this week. People like debating things.
So
like
I'll
what?
say this: if he keeps playing like this, I'd probably move him up to third MVP behind the big two there. The stretch he's on, and again, tonight statistically shooting not the best, but I just love the way he looks, Noah. And it's the control. Like, he's gluing lineups together. He's playing big minutes. The defensive stuff against New York. There's so much stuff you got to take into account beyond did the shots go in or not with him, because I think there's just so much that's going through him. And again, it's 7 for 18. It's 3 for 12. Did he take some ill-advised shots? Yeah. But he's just in such control. And that's what stands out to me. Like, the transition plays, he'll pull it back and make a patient pass. He'll wait until the defense completely collapses to swing the ball out. And quick decisions, too. I mean, there can't be many players passing the ball better in the NBA right now. Like, it's probably only a small handful, and that's amazing to think about. Like, the passing for him, Noah, it's become like the most consistent, effective, deadly part of his game. And there's so much else there, but that passing has just reached such a high level for him. I mean, he just had 9 the other night. Like, the assists are coming in droves here.
He's also he's not fishing for assists. That's the main thing. Like my favorite player growing up was Rondo, and Rondo I still think is one of the greatest point guards of that time. But the reality is that he had the ball in his hand the whole game. He would overpass, he would pass up layups, right, to find guys. And he wasn't getting like many hockey assists. And I think what's remarkable about the fact that Tatum's assist numbers are actually been so high recently is that it's not like he has the ball in his hand and he's dribbling, trying to find somebody wide open. Like these are like legit assists, you know. If he was playing point and actually running the entire possession and either shooting or passing at the end, like some of these like a Trae Young type thing, then maybe we'd see them even higher. But I feel like he's not even like the numbers aren't even reflective of like how much he's actually leading the charge and how sometimes it's not showing up in the stat sheet because there is a hockey assist or whatever else. But yeah, I know when after the Philadelphia game, I asked Joe about his playmaking, and a couple other reporters did as well, and he was like, "Well, this is how Tatum's been. Like now, you guys are noticing. Like now people are kind of using him for headlines." And it's like I do think that there's been aspects of his game that have been a little bit neglected, and the people because he hasn't scored 40 points as much as other guys, like it's been a little bit. He has been a little bit overlooked. Like I get that stuff, but that playmaking right now is not what it was 2 years ago. And so there's no reason to deny it. I think that it's a clear place where he's grown.
I think
It's
the
not
playoffs
even
are a turning point, Jimmy.
It's not even a question that his playmaking, it's not just his playmaking. I would say it's his decision making, Noah, because a lot of those decisions now are making the pass, right? And as opposed to forcing the shots. And it's not like he doesn't, John Zannis would come on here and we were texting about earlier, Bobby, and how Tatum still will fall into that trap at times of forcing a couple of shots. But and my defense, my counter to that is find me a superstar who doesn't, though. And you could say Jokic might not. I get it because he's just like a different type of player and whatever. But 99% of these superstars over the course of their careers are going to find ways to get shots up. And it might not always be the best shot, but it's whether it's a heat check, whether they're trying to shoot themselves out of something, whatever it is, they're going to take an ill bad shot here or there. I think Tatum has minimized that greatly over this season. And a lot of times now it feels like he baits teams into doubling him, or he'll bring guys into an area of the court where he can free up one of his own guys and then find him and then find that player for, the assist or the potential assist. And I feel like that's definitely something that we've all noticed happen a lot more this season than it ever has in the past. So if anyone ever tells you this is what he's always been doing, gaslighting. That's all that is, Noah. They're just gaslighting.
I want to pull up the story too from today. It was in the Washington Post, I believe. And he talked about the face of the league stuff, Jimmy. Got into the finals MVP that he didn't win, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And embraced it a little bit. And I like hearing it from him. I like him aspiring for that top spot. I like him advocating for himself because, listen, we've been as tough on him as anybody. And I don't regret it. I think over the years, he's had moments where he's had to play better. The 2022 playoffs finals weren't great and, all the way down the line. But I just don't get whether it's nationally or people who just don't like the Celtics or, we were trying to figure it out on the podcast the other day I did with James Edwards, and all of us have been trying to figure out like the pretty stark anti-Tatum sentiment and whether it's due to the lack of personality or, whatever you want to throw in there. I really don't even understand it, Noah. I've been trying to forever, but there's just this cloud over his head everywhere he goes. All the way to Abu Dhabi when they're asking him about the kids watch. And it's like, only this stuff could happen to this guy who's been so good, who's been so consistent and effective and has won a championship at this point. And so, he's saying in this piece, like, leading the team in those three categories and, it's for the voters to decide who's MVP and this and that.
You're muted.
Still muted.
Superior for face of the league. And it's true. And, I don't care about it that much. And there's different definitions people have for it. But I almost feel like just becoming a Tatum advocate because there's so few, get so much crap. We watch him night in and night out, and he's so good. Like, like I know we have our issues and we nitpick him and stuff because we watch him so much, but there's people on the outside who don't watch him night to night who genuinely don't seem to understand how good he is.
I mean,
I think part of it is that people don't look at most players all around games. They really love like one or two things about a player's game. And so if you look at like Jokic, it's obviously the playmaking is incredible, right? So and among other things, but just that alone can get people so excited because he's throwing passes they've never seen before, right? Or Anthony Edwards, like his charisma, his personality. There's not a lot of players that have that energy in our generation. So people fixate on that. I think Tatum doesn't have his one thing that draws in casual fans who aren't looking at like all of the aspects of basketball. He's not like
he's
the best.
master at none. He doesn't
Yeah,
have the
he's the
one
best he's not the best at
premium.
everything. And they are. I see someone, yeah, they are kind of like a little bit gimmicks. And the reality is that he also doesn't really have holes in his game. Like I think that as a defender last year in the playoffs, he was really underrated because he wasn't the one that was guarding Luka. He wasn't the one that was guarding the ball. But he was so effective at disrupting what the Mavericks were trying to do with their lob threats, with their bigs. But it's just not flashy. Like he's just not a flashy player, and he's somebody that just does everything really well. And I do think he achieved too much success at a young age. Like I know that he says that a lot. I know that's become a little bit of a trope, but because he was in the conference finals every year, people were thinking about him choking in the finals or choking in the conference finals or whatever else. Whereas
But
like
that's
most
over
players,
at this point. He's won.
yeah, but there's a preconceived notion about him that's not going to change after one championship. I mean, I think that we have notions about players that are kind of out of their control at a certain point. Like, I mean, I don't want to go too off topic, but like Kevin Durant is an example of a guy who like it didn't matter what he did when he got to the Warriors because people already had their preconceived notion about him joining the Warriors. So even though he had like some incredible finals performances, the people don't care about them, right? So we know that like the perspective that you have going into something shapes the way that you actually can perceive that experience. And I don't know if it's the early success, if it's the finals, if it's the fact that he doesn't have like this one thing that he does that nobody's ever seen before. But I think people that actually talk basketball and watch basketball and are experts in this space, the analysts on TV, they should be looking at everything, not just the flashy one trick thing. And that's why I think that's the biggest reason I think he's a little bit underrated.
it's a number of things. One is personality. He's a quiet guy, always has been.
He doesn't defend himself much.
He doesn't defend him. You mean like to what? Other players?
Like publicly.
To media?
Like when
Okay,
people
yeah.
say stuff
No.
about. The only thing was the stupid Brandon Jennings thing.
Right. Yeah, that was true. Yeah. When he went on, they made a big deal about that in social and things. But no, listen, Tatum's soft-spoken guy. A lot of these players in the Celtics are. That's kind of who a lot of these guys they would rather just let their play do the talking. Not super flashy, not super emotional out there, right? I think also he's a Boston Celtic. So right off the bat, there are a lot of haters. We were talking about haters earlier. There are a lot of haters of the Celtics because the Celtics are a winning organization. They have been for many, many years. If you're born and raised in Boston or New England, you're a Celtics fan, that's great. If you weren't, you probably grew up hating the Celtics. So there's some of that too, passed down from generation to generation. Also, yeah, I mean, they've had a lot of success, the Celtics team. Tatum, to your point, Bobby, yes, he has won a title, but fans are already on to fans will, and when I say fans, I don't mean Celtics fans, I just mean NBA fans, fans of other teams, will try to find another way to knock you down. So what are they going to go after? The fact that he didn't get MVP or that he wasn't dominant in the playoffs, right? They're going to go after the fact that Kerr kind of embarrassed him on Team USA. I mean, you can make the case that Tatum won the NBA Finals in a gold medal and his stock somehow took a hit. That's honestly how some people want to make you feel, which is crazy to say.
Because he didn't play well in either.
Not around here, not in
or consistently.
Right. Well, he didn't play at all in the Olympics, of course, and because of how he was playing when he did get an opportunity. And yeah, in the NBA Finals, he didn't play great. In the playoffs, he didn't play great. He certainly played well enough, and there was a case to be made that he was going to be the MVP. It went to Jaylen Brown. And I think the article you're referencing, Bobby, he was asked about that, and he basically said, I led the team in points, rebounds, and assists, and I didn't get the MVP. It's the first time it's ever happened, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. people can vote for whoever they want to vote for, and it is what it is. And if that's the attitude he has, then great. I want him to use it as fuel to, continue to want to be better. And I feel like maybe deep down, he is using the negativity and the naysayers as fuel because he is having, again, an unbelievable year. Bob, you're saying he's got your vote for number 3 MVP right now. And, I think a night like tonight's a good example of why sometimes he gets the flack. I mean, if you watch the game, you saw all the great things that he did out there. But yeah, he turned the ball over a few times. He didn't blow you away with any specific stat, but you see what he gives the game when he's out there and how much better he makes his teammates and the guys that are out there around him. And you understand why, if you do watch the Celtics team, you understand why he is such a good player and why he is so important to them. Casual NBA fan might not see it that way. He might not be getting the same publicity that Luka gets or that, SGA has been getting, right? Players like that. So it is what it is. I think he's accepted it. And he's not going to change. Like, personality-wise, he's not going to change. He's a soft-spoken guy. He lets his game do the talking. I think he has gotten a little bit. I will say this about Tatum. I do think the emotions picked up a little bit out there. I do see him get a little bit more.
A little hawk scuffle.
Yeah. A little bit more kissing to the crowd than we used to get in past years. I think he's got a little bit more of a swagger about him. I think he's complained a little bit less than he used to complain too. I think that was maybe a turnoff for.
Well, he did get a tech again tonight.
He did get a tech tonight. That was kind of a weak tech. But overall, I think it's been less. So
yeah, I don't know what he can do.
All that to say about.
I just wish, like, I actually want to like mute the term face of the league from like my everyday life, including Twitter, but also just like discussions, because like it doesn't make sense to me that the players are even weighing in on this. If I was a player and they asked me the face of the league, I'd be like, I'm not even doing this topic, because the face of the league happens when you're when you're playing in June every summer. Like if you're in June on the floor and you're the guy every year in the finals, like Steph and LeBron became the faces of the league because they were there every single final series, right? And like I think a lot of this becomes about legacy and about like who's the face. He wants to be the face, and he'll be the face if he's in the playoffs every summer. If they're the last team standing, if they win 3 championships, like it doesn't matter if he has charisma or aura of people like SGA or whoever else.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll be the face of the league because they're there.
You might have to go head to head with SGA to secure the second. And you mentioned it, Noah. Like a lot of teams have won over the last 5-6 years here and haven't had staying power. We're still not sure
Nobody's
if the
won
Celtics
twice.
are going to have.
So this is your opportunity.
Yeah, we don't know if the Celtics are going to have the staying power, especially beyond this year. Obviously, I think they're back in that favorite position right now, the way they've played lately. But they're going to have to get through an SGA. They're going to have to, potentially see Jokic there or something like that. And, he did great opposite Luka, and I think that should have earned him, points against Luka in that conversation. I don't mind the conversation as much. I think that's what we do. We stack up the best players here, and SGA deserves to be ahead of him right now, just based on how he's playing. Jokic, the body of work there is just ridiculous, and those are high bars he has to meet, Jimmy. And I think sometimes
SGA deserves to be ahead of him in what?
MVP, as well as I think top players in the league right now, the way he's played. So once you get past those two, that's where I have Tatum right now. And it's a high bar, Jimmy. I mean, those guys, even a Giannis, when he's at his best, it's a ridiculous bar he has to reach.
What is it about SGA that you give it? It's not a hot take. I think, SGA.
I mean, he's carrying an enormous weight on a still relatively young, inexperienced team every night. And he goes out there and scores 30 like it's automatic. And last night he had the 3 blocks, the 3 steals. He's inevitable in a way, at least scoring wise, that Tatum isn't. So I give him the edge off that. Like, he's just able to get to the free throw line with such consistency. And I know some people don't like that. He's able to get his shot off with such consistency, and he's the center of everything out there. Obviously Jalen Williams chips in with some of the creation ability, but we watched them face off earlier this year, and it was ugly, for Tatum and the Celtics there. So I'm excited for the rematch. I'm not saying there's a massive gap between those two, but he's going to win MVP, Jimmy.
Right.
And I don't even think it's really a debate right now.
Yeah, I think even if he does win MVP, he still needs to have some like marquee playoff moments, deep runs, to be in that conversation of like how you remember this generation, which that's what the face of the league is, right? Like
This is a
good
big year
regulars.
for him.
Yeah, this year and the next couple. I never want to say like he's 26 years old. He has plenty of time.
This is his
But
last
I think
chance.
sometimes not his
Right.
last chance.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys are both right. I mean, with SGA, I think it feels like maybe he's brought this team. He probably can take more credit for bringing the team to where they are right now than Tatum can, because when Tatum came into the league, Celtics were already successful. He kind of eased his way into things, and they've just kind of ridden that success. And guys have come in and out along the way. I mean, think about the roster makeover around Tatum since he's entered the league and been in the Celtics organizations. Obviously bringing in guys like Drew, bringing in Porzingis, developing with Jaylen Brown over those years, right? They've kind of been the 1A, 1B sort of thing, whereas SGA kind of jumps in, takes this OKC team that really felt like they kind of came out of nowhere, and now here they are, arguably, I think I was looking a day or two ago, they were the favorites right now to win the title ahead of the Celtics.
Are they still?
It's very slight, but this was a day or two ago.
I mean, he's averaging 32, 5, 6, 2 steals and a block at his size,
right,
shooting 52 from the field. And he's up to 36 from 3. That was the weakness you could point to, is the threes. And then you just
the
look
defense,
at the box score every night. Yeah, and a couple 50-point games recently, 30 points feels automatic most nights for him. You're right. No, he's got to win. And that's a factor here, and they have the expectations and the team to do it this year. And we've talked about how it feels inevitable that these teams are going to match up later. So hopefully we get that, because that's where we'll figure it out, right? Head to head, mano a mano, and whoever wins will get a real edge in that conversation right now. But just going off the productivity right now, and even last year too, I do think SGA has a slight edge on him. And the Jokic stuff, I mean, what do you say?
Right. Another unbelievable player. The thing is, and I think this is the problem with a problem in the NBA right now, is they need faces. They need guys to be personalities.
That's why it's a conversation now. Yeah.
Yeah. They need guys to be superstars. And you're right. I mean, if you look around, if you want to talk about ratings, if you want to talk about whatever it is, the NBA hasn't been trending in the right direction, I think, in that sense. And when you look at guys that are getting up there in age now, that have retired or will be retiring, talking about the LeBrons and the Chris Pauls and the guys that have recently retired, you're looking for new superstars to come in, and you're looking for American players too, right? So Tatum is one of those guys. Anthony Edwards is one of those guys. And, Brunson, players that can, kind of like just make you a reason to tune in. And it's different in the NBA because the salary cap, and guys have to shift teams a lot more. And you can't just go to the big market team that easily, which means that, some of these cities like New York or LA or wherever, they're not going to be as tuned in if their teams aren't playing the way that, or if they don't have the roster that they want to have now. In LA, that's not an issue anymore with Luka coming in there. But if you're the NBA, you really, really have your fingers crossed that these types of players can make the leap. And some of these young guys coming into the league now can really make a leap and be players that casual NBA fans want to tune in to watch. And that's kind of, I think, where we're at right now. But I want to circle back to this game a little bit more. But before we do, and then we'll talk about Detroit. But before we do,
I am creeping in, Jimmy. Sorry.
Yeah, you are creeping in. Before we do, I want to make sure Bobby backs up. And we talk about our friends at Prize Picks. Well, what is Prize Picks, you ask? It's the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks. I don't have the Prize Picks graphic that I wanted to put up, so you guys are just going to be stuck with me. But guys, it's the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. We know we have listeners and viewers all over America and the world. And I will also say that if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly. When you play $5, you don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. It discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups on days like Taco Tuesday, which is tonight. So if you sign on to Prize Picks, take a look around. You'll see which players you can get that 25% little discount on. And then they get something else on Friday too, which is pretty fun. So again, guys, download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Somebody else who ran his game tonight in the starting lineup, Torrey Craig. Noah's smirking. I don't know why she's smirking. I just want to talk about the Celtics starters tonight. That's all I want to do. Torrey Craig gets a surprise start, and I'm interested to see your guys' take on what you thought from Craig. Personally, I was uninspired. I thought he was a little slow out there. I don't think he really did much to earn more than the 15 minutes he got. I noticed that he didn't start in the start. I noticed he wasn't in the starting lineup to start the second half. And obviously, maybe just chalk it up to a bad shooting night, 0 for 5 from 3. And he did have a few wide open shots. So going to shake this one off. But is he a guy that you think Mazzulla is going to be able to trust over the rest of this bench brigade that they keep kind of rotating through? Aside, I'm not talking about, Pritchard and Horford and Hauser, but everybody after that. There seems to be a spot for the taking here. After Cornet too. So again, this is more of a regular season argument because if you're all healthy, you're probably not going to see much of these other guys anyways. But is Craig a guy that we think Mazzulla will be able to turn to the rest of this year? Bobby,
I think he's going to get. Oh, go ahead.
Just kidding. I'll start with Noah.
I was going to say, I think he's going to get some more opportunities. This was a little bit of a tough one for him. Shaw was off. He hit his first 2 threes as a Celtic. I thought that his stint versus the 76ers on the road was really strong. In that fourth quarter. He had 3 blocks in 7 minutes. So those 2 stints were pretty meaningless, and he looked better in those. And this stint tonight was more high pressure. He started the game, had a very last-second opportunity, and I thought he was a little out of it. A couple of times he got backdoor cut, and just defensively he made a few mistakes. And then obviously his shot was off in this one. So I'm not going to conclude too much from one 50-minute stint, but certainly was not the kind of performance that you're thinking you're going to draw much from. Right. I will say from Joe's like words, which doesn't always mean much, but he has kind of said things like he thinks that they can get a lot out of Torrey. We're used to talking to Joe. We've been to a lot of Joe press conferences over the last few years. You can kind of read between the lines. I think that there's more of a pathway forward for Torrey Craig based off of Joe's comments than most of these other bench players. As someone who regularly asks about the bench players, I want to
believe him. Yeah, I do. And we remember what happened with Tillman last year. Tried it a little early, some promising returns, and then mostly through the end of that regular season, you didn't see him much for reasons that could happen with Craig. Not being up to speed with the system, not being in the right places at the right times, and not making shots. The shot here is still what makes you think that he can break through and be that next man up. And that's what they need. Someone who, when someone goes down, and obviously 4 guys are down here tonight, he's the next guy to step in. And the fact that he was the spot starter here, the fact that he stepped in the minutes in that game where Jalen was out before the break, I think, in the Spurs game. Yep. So that's encouraging. And Joe, again, speaking highly of him, the stuff I love when we were there in Southie, Noah, where he's praising Joe, to the moon, just showing a ton of admiration for him. And you see them talking, like he comes out of the game and they have those moments, and at practice they're going through stuff, and there just seems to be a strong, quick forming a relationship there that I think is going to work in his favor. But he has to play well, and he's okay tonight. I don't think there was anything here outside of a couple misses where you're like, "Ooh, it wasn't awful," but you always go back to this, Jimmy, and I love him. I loved meeting him the other day. I love what we've seen in limited minutes so far, and he's just a vet. He's a solid vet who's just been around. But the tried and true notion that's hard to get away from here is buyout guys almost never make an impact. Almost never, no matter how much excitement there is or how big of a name it is or, whatever you think of the player, usually they get bought out for a reason. Usually that team can't get anything for them for a reason. And then that ends up showing with the new team who probably isn't going to use them that much. And that's who he is here, Jimmy. If they're healthy, he's not going to play.
Right.
If they're missing a guy, and it's, the one's Hauser, Noah, and he plays 30 minutes in this game, he looked great. But night to night, we haven't been able to predict what they're going to get from Hauser. This is a guy who needs to come in and at least play, I don't know what, 70, 80% of Hauser's level to be able to sustain missing him for a night. So again, not a hugely consequential player here. He's a guy who looks like he's fitting in. He was wearing the headband tonight too, and the personality fit seems good here. And I like the game too. So 2 out of the 3 nights look good. Tonight wasn't as great. I'm still feeling positive about this addition here. But from the start, now I said you always have to temper your expectations with buyout guys.
And honestly, I don't want there to be too many expectations because they have more than enough on this roster without him. There's no reason that he needs to be playing significant minutes when it matters. But we talked about them wanting to have a backup wing. I think there's a level of trust that even after tonight, having a lackluster stint, I still think there's a level of trust in him that the younger guys aren't going to have in big moments just because he's been there before. He just has. You can tell the way even with us, he talks, his level of confidence to him that is pretty unwavering. And so he's probably not going to be a big, he's probably not going to be a big part of this playoff run. He's probably not going to play significant minutes. He may not play at all, but he's insurance.
What's it mean that he started over this guy, Keita, who the fans have had a bit of a love-hate relationship with Keita? I think when we've seen Keita out there at points, he looks like
fans have turned on Keita.
There's been points where he looks. I think it means nothing.
I think Joe literally, Porzingis was out and Joe was like, you know what? Let's give Torrey Craig a chance. Because watching Joe last year, he gave
how I feel too.
Delano Banton a star. One night it was Lamar Stevens. I feel like sometimes Joe just wants to give a guy an opportunity to start. Let's see if you're ready. You're supposed to stay ready. Let's see. And put him in a position that he didn't expect. There
to
could be no logic.
Yeah.
I think it was a lineup thing too, because Toronto
mind
started
games.
Bogbo, who's small. Yeah, so I think they wanted a big against the second unit big for Toronto, and it bums me out a little bit, Noah, because he was such a great story early on this year. It's not like he played bad tonight. He gave them solid minutes, but I think just not being out there consistently and the lack of rhythm that creates. I mean, he fouled in this game, which is a problem for him sometimes. The positioning can sometimes be an issue for him defensively. I'm not trying to nitpick him too much here because I think he had a solid game, but he was in such a flow, and it looked like he was figuring out that whole defensive scheme they're running, and it looked like they were using him in some unique positions early on this year. And for him, once they got healthy, to completely disappear, that was tough. And, you wish he could play the 4 or something or fit in a position where if they were at full health, you could still see him a little bit. But I don't – not that they started Craig because they trust Craig more than Keita, but I do think there's a little bit of a trust issue with Keita sometimes, that he's going to always be in the right spot, that he's going to always do the right thing. And I'm glad he's here long term. I'm glad that he's going to continue to develop with this group. And the fact that this is your 4th center, Jimmy, that's a real luxury. But he is a little bit of a step below, I feel like, Noah, what we saw from him earlier in the year.
Yeah, it's hard because he hasn't had the rhythm either. This, it's the skill to be able to not play a few games and then all of a sudden be able to play and be in a great rhythm and kind of not make mistakes. Few guys are able to do that. I think Luke, that's one of the things that really stands out about him, is that it's almost like I almost have to go back to his games played and realize he has been benched for 2 weeks because you don't even notice it when he's back in. And part of that is that he is kind of a veteran player at this point. But with Keita tonight, the fouling was the main thing that stood out. And I think Kayla Burden, who was the sideline reporter tonight, her halftime report from Sam Cassell was that Sam Cassell was like, we're going to see a better energy from him in the second. We're going to see a better version of him. But ultimately, I thought that he did what he needed to do minus the fouling. Because, he had 5 fouls in, 19 minutes. like if you needed him more, he might not have been able to stay on the floor. And that was the big knock on him earlier in the season.
Right.
Or earlier in his career, that he couldn't stay on the floor because he was fouling so much. So that's a big thing for him, for Joe. I know for in his player development, that's a big point of emphasis. And in that sense, that's where he struggled tonight. And I know it may not matter that much to us or to the fans, but I think behind the scenes, that's one of the marks that they're monitoring for him. But I don't think it had much to do with why, I don't think him starting or not starting or anything had anything to do with his performance. I think it was kind of just like, let's give Torrey Craig a chance here.
And Joe was pissed after the fourth foul. You saw it on the sideline. So
yeah, that's like because he has things the same way that he's really adamant. I think there was I forget who someone wrote a story about how Joe was really focused on Keita not goaltending, and like that was a big thing for him. So even one goaltend would be like, that's the thing you're not supposed to do.
He did
right?
goaltend too. Yeah,
he had. Oh, did he goaltend tonight? I missed that.
Yeah, he did quite quickly
at the end.
Yeah,
so he had a couple of those mistakes that I think are not hugely critical, especially not tonight, but are things that the coaching staff is monitoring. But in a night like tonight, when you don't have Luke and you don't have Al, and you don't have KP, it was great that he was able to provide those 20 minutes, and he's a lot more serviceable than a lot of fourth bigs or whatever.
And I don't get the complaining from the fans, Jimmy. I know he's had a couple games here. Generally this season, not tonight, but there's been games he's come into and made some mistakes in where people get pissed and they're like, get him out of here. And they loved him at the beginning of the year. So I don't get the quick turn, but I keep stressing this.
No, go ahead.
He's your fourth center. Look across the league at who the backup centers are on some of these teams. And when you realize that the Celtics backup center is a future Hall of Famer in Horford, and their third string center's a really good backup on most teams in Cornet.
Another future Hall of Famer.
Yes. As Noah told us the other day. Fourth string center is Keita, who can have games like this and the spot starts we saw from him earlier this season. And even the Tillman thing here, Jimmy, where we're all bummed about how it's gone this year and how it's looked, but he's a minimum salary player who's a really good defender who could step in an emergency situation and you would feel pretty good about it. And I'm still always getting tweets about, Celtics need another big, this and that. You are as blessed as any team in the NBA with your center situation. And I don't think fans realize it.
It's a fair point. And again, it goes back to these guys really not having much of an effect on things, assuming you have full health going into the playoffs, which is the goal here. And which is why you saw them sit, for their guys tonight, the first night of a back-to-back. And I'm sure a number of those guys could have played if they needed to. So Celtics are already at the point where they're trying to angle themselves to be ready for when the games actually matter. And we're how many games in are we? 50 something or whatever. And we get another 30 plus to go. But this is how you have to manage a long season like this and make sure that guys are healthy and ready to go and that the rotations are where you need them to be. And yeah, Bobby, to your point, yes, they have serviceable guys on this bench, but I think fans do have a reason to at least be somewhat frustrated that out of all of that, those stay ready crew guys, whether it's Keita, whether it's Tillman, whether it's Shireman, whether it's Walsh, any of those guys, there hasn't really been a game or a couple of games this year where they've been consistently effective or really shown to be a part of the rotation, whether it's this year or really if you have any reason to believe it'll be in future seasons. Not that we need to be thinking about future seasons right now, but I think that's probably where some of the frustration lies with the fact that there's nobody emerging.
And it's so tough to tell, like you said, Noah. Davison comes into this game and it's like 2 minutes and there's just not enough there for us to judge. Walsh's minutes early, he ran around a little bit and did a couple good things, but it's just
I liked
not
his minutes. I was surprised they were not more extensive.
Yeah, I feel like there's not a strong level of trust there from Joe either. And so much of it is just, can you knock down a shot? Not to boil it down to that, but the shooting's so important for those guys. I know you're going to say something about Keita, but I want to ask you too, do you still feel he could be part of the long-term conversation at center for the Celtics, beyond Horford, beyond, whatever's in the mix now, Cornet, who could be gone after this year? Do you still have that level of trust that Keita can be a consistent backup center for this team, let's say?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think Cornette's going to be gone after this year. I think he's going to stay. Personally, I think that he's passed out money before.
You think he'll take another minimum?
I don't know. I think so. I'd be surprised if he left. I think he's in a unique.
He's getting paid.
Unique character.
It's
Cornette's
so
trying to make
tough.
some paper. If
By
he
the
doesn't
way,
do it
his
now, when's he gonna
agent,
do it?
his agent went to like a college today or something. He got hired by like a college. So
His
different
agent went to
agent
college.
now. His like big agent, I guess, got hired by a college or something. So he's not going to be his main agent anymore. But that was Luke's thing, though. He wanted to stay. He liked it here. And
Yeah.
like I said, I reported he had an $8 million offer and declined it. So,
but do you think
maybe he'll do it
he
again.
declined it? But there's a reason for that, right? And maybe the role here was better. Maybe the publicity that he could get here was better with an increased role, knowing that he was going to go on a playoff run. I don't know the team he declined the offer from, so I don't know what that could have looked like if there was a chance for playoffs.
Jimmy. Of course, it was Utah.
So there you go. Yeah, so
I think
there you
the
go. There
reality
was no
is
playoff
that
opportunity there.
the reality is that we can look and look at things through the lens of like, okay, Luke could get $5 million or $10 million in this team, and he'll get $2 million, $20 million.
Probably not.
I don't think he's gonna get $20 million. But my point is that Luke has kids. He has a wife. He has a family. They've been living in Boston for years now. He also has a team that loves him and that a system that he really thrives in. And if you look around the league,
reporters who really love him.
One wrong
we
move,
know.
Next thing you know, you're Marcus Smart and you're getting traded around. You're getting bounced around the league, and you are not able to rebound your footing. For a guy like Luke Cornette, that's at the end of the day, he's a role player. He's not a star. Things can go wrong so quickly. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the NBA. I mean, we see it all the time. You know, if you're smart and you play all your cards right and you never make the wrong move, you could have a 15-year career. And that's someone with the same level of talent could have a 4-year-long career if the moves go poorly. And so I think, Luke, some of the calculus is not just about maximizing your money, but it's also about like recognizing the fact that right here, he's really thriving. That doesn't mean that he's going to thrive everywhere that he goes, because there are things about his game that work great in Boston that might not work great elsewhere. So
it's a good point.
I think what was it?
I said it's a good point. I didn't think about it that way.
I'm not, and again, I'm not saying that Luke wouldn't get traded. Of course, he would get traded if it was necessary. I think that he might go against popular NBA logic of maximizing your money, because he's the kind of person, to my understanding, that balances all the different factors of like longevity in a career. So maybe he'll leave. I wouldn't be, it could go either way. But I think that there's an element of it's easy to sit at home and basically look at the pocketbook and be like, why would you turn down money? But he already has done that. And he had no reason to think that he was going to take a leap this year, right? He could have not played at all this year. They're bringing everybody back. They brought back the entire front court. So he didn't take a gamble thinking I'm going to get a max contract next summer, right? He just wanted to stay. He just wanted to stay in Boston, and it's worked great for him this season. And as far as Nimi goes, I do think Nimi can still be in the long-term plans. He hasn't shown flashes of being like a long-term player as far as really he fits into the offense, or he's the new Al. Like, I think we want him to be things that he hasn't turned into yet. But I also think that some of the reason why he gets scrutinized, if he does, I honestly don't see that much of it online, but I also just stop scrolling during games as much. But it's part of it is that he just is one of those guys that makes frustrating mistakes for people. I think the same thing about Jalen. Like, when Jalen dribbles off his foot, that infuriates people, even though it just counts as one turnover, right? It's just one turnover. When Nimi gets scored on, it's just one basket, right? People get scored on every possession. But I think that he just is one of those guys that the kinds of mistakes that he make just bothers people. And I've learned to accept that certain guys are just more prone to doing that than others. And so that's part of it, I think, because he actually he's had generally good games when he's on the floor, but when he does something wrong, like there's like backlash right away.
I love that we talk so much about Luke on a night where he didn't even play.
I just realized that.
Well, I mean, listen, we can.
The other way to that too, and Noah mentioned it, Jimmy, is again, he had maybe a chance there to go to Europe or something when he ended up back in Maine, and he just went to Maine. Cornette.
You're talking about Luke, yeah.
Yeah.
No, listen, I understand all your guys' points, but I don't think Luke.
It's always a tough decision.
I don't think he took a discount just so he could always take discounts. I think maybe it made sense for him to do it in this situation, and every situation's different, and every off season, he's going to get different offers, and maybe he'll get a big one that he just can't refuse. Maybe he won't. And if he doesn't, yeah, it would make sense to come back here. I think certainly if you're choosing between Boston and Utah, obviously you have a lot of outside factors aside from the money that you would weigh in favor of coming back to Boston. One of them is, trying to repeat as a champion and getting a lot more of those nationally televised games. And again, I don't think he resigned here without a clue of what his role would be. I'm fairly certain that he knew that he would be a part of this team. Who knows though? Yeah. Did we know that he was going to be more effective this year? No, I don't think anyone knew that, but I'm sure he had confidence in himself that he would be, by staying in the same, staying with the same organization and everything like that, being more comfortable with where you're at. But if he gets a 3-year offer for, what, Bobby, $6 million a year or something, do you think he's going to get 20 million? I mean, if he gets a legit offer, I don't know how you can turn that down for all the reasons you say he can't. He's got a wife, he's got a kids, he's got a family. He's still young. You can go move to wherever the hell you want to move for the next 5 years, 10 years of your life, retire, and you're my age, and you hopefully still have the rest of your life ahead of you. So it's not like he moves to another team and he just changed his life forever. And regarding Marcus Smart, all Marcus Smart did was sign the deal that he could get. And what happens after that is what happens after that. You can't really control it. And so
we'll see. It's an interesting storyline building into the summer.
Yeah.
He's playing great.
But I mean, the Celtics, again, NBA created this issue. Celtics aren't going to have the money to just be handing out contracts like they've been doing. So that's the other thing. Before we head out of here, not going to do the longest show tonight because there's a game tomorrow and it's against Detroit. So we'll do a little Detroit preview show. This is Bobby's new adopted team. This Pistons team is not your slightly older brother's Pistons team. Okay,
I'll try to keep this short-winded because I know Noah wants to go watch Luka.
Yeah, we got
this
Luka
team
playing right now. But real quick, this Detroit team is
so great.
Already won more games this year than they've won combined the previous 2 seasons. This is an up-and-coming young Detroit team that I say up-and-coming, but they're like on the brink of having arrived, right? Is that how you feel, Bobby?
7 straight wins. You have Cade Cunningham, who's borderline MVP status right now, the way he's playing. Just buttoning as a star, finally putting it all together, taking the leap maybe we saw Tatum make in like 2020 there. Malik Beasley, unsung off-season signing, one of the 3-point made leaders in the NBA, and a guy who's giving you 20, 30 points on many nights. He was a role guy in a lot of teams before this, and now he's a star on this team. You got Beef Stew doing Beef Stew things. You got Duran. You got Tobias Harris, who's been a steady veteran on this team, and JB Bickerstaff as coach. And they have a real identity. They're tough. You got Ron Holland boxing guys. You got Oscar Thompson flying to the rim, ton of athleticism, young guy. This could be a playoff series, Jimmy. They'll succeed. They're winning a ton. They're separating themselves from Orlando, but who's to say they can't beat the Knicks the way they're playing if it was a 3-6? Who's to say
those teams would beat the hell out of each other?
Oh, yeah. But yeah, they're awesome. They're fun to watch. They've been my second favorite team, or second most team I've watched behind Boston this year. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really good game.
Noah, any thoughts on Detroit, or you're already on to Luka and the Lakers?
I'm not on to anything. Am I looking forward to watching?
I see your eyes over.
I'm not watching anything. I don't. My internet's not strong enough for me to be multitasking on my computer.
I'm multitasking.
I don't have. You are multitasking?
Yes.
He's looking right through us.
I thought you were.
My internet would crash if I opened another tab on my computer.
Know it. Just say
honestly,
Detroit's the best team.
I'm so excited for this Detroit game. I'm so happy for Bobby, who sends me Detroit content every single day about Cade Cunningham and every record that they're breaking. I do think it's great that they sat most of their players today so they can be at full strength tomorrow, because this is a playoff team and you want to have your best bet against a playoff team. So back-to-back, Tatum played 40 minutes tonight, so he's going to have to kind of push through. Maybe Jaylen Brown rests. I wouldn't be shocked if he's dealing with some lingering things from tonight that he'll be out tomorrow. But it sounds like we'll have at least the front court back. But yeah, I just like seeing teams improve with continuity. I think so many times you see teams try to get so creative in free agency, whether it's the Knicks or the Wolves, and you end up not. And teams like the Pistons, who just kind of stuck with the guys they had,
Mhm.
gave it another year, added around the margins. Like they just made a big leap, and it's fun. It's good for the league. It's fun to watch. So I've enjoyed their success. Maybe not to the level that Bobby has, but I have enjoyed seeing them succeed this season.
Bobby,
Legacy franchise too.
how
Sherrod's a big
can
fan.
Sherrod will probably be at the game tomorrow. How can Detroit beat Boston?
Oh, they'll just have to rock them. Slam them around, beat them on the boards. Detroit things.
Mhm.
Uh, physicality is something I want to see. How the Celtics deal with it? Big centers, double big lineups. They've been able to counter it by playing a ton of double big themselves. So it is important and fitting, as Noah said there, that Porzingis is back, Horford's back. Those guys are able to play, and hopefully Cornette's back as well, who's out for personal reasons here. We don't know what those are. That was a combination, those three guys, that gave you a ton of versatility in minutes and quality minutes together there. And I think you're going to have to do that against Detroit. Now, the Pistons aren't laying it up from three. That's a real advantage you have there. But they're going to play big. They're going to try to knock you around. Cade's going to run the show. So it's keying in on him and securing the boards and just stuff that the Celtics do every night. That's the good thing about their game plan, is it adapts pretty well to any opponent. It's not like you're saying that, the Celtics have to do something completely different here based on who they're playing. They usually just do the same thing every night, and it works against no matter who they're playing. But physical teams, you said it, Jimmy, teams that beat you up a little bit, that try to rock you inside and, bump you off your spots, those are the ones that have at least knocked the Celtics off their spot at times this year. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. Back to back, tough too, big Tatum minutes. So we'll see how they respond.
It sounds like this is a hard hat game. It sounds like if you're going to the Garden tomorrow, bring the hard
It's on
hat.
the road.
Detroit.
It's on
shoot.
the road.
All right, if you're going to Detroit tomorrow, bring the hard hat. If you're watching the game, if you bought a hard hat, put it on tomorrow for the game. If you're watching it on the couch, everyone's going to show up and go to work tomorrow. Guys, before we go, everybody knows I'm a big gimmick guy, and I can't do the show without at least one gimmick. Right? It's the
Yeah.
Brownie Award. This is a Brownie Award type of game. There wasn't a big superstar performance tonight. This was a team effort. A lot of guys were out. Players had an opportunity to step up that don't typically do. I'm not saying any of them did, but we'll start with you, Noah. Who gets your
I'm not saying
brownie?
any of them did.
Yeah, well, they really didn't, but
I'm gonna go with Pritchard. We didn't talk
of course
about him
you
much.
are.
Of course.
I'm trying to pick guys that we didn't just talk about. So
That's
didn't talk about
fair.
We
Pritchard.
didn't talk about Pritchard.
You
Good
have
point.
the
Yeah,
floor.
and you know what? 20 points on an 8 of 17 shooting. Just another day in the office. 7 rebounds, 2 offensive rebounds, 1 big one, 2 steals. He's just, if you give him the opportunity, if he plays 35 minutes and he takes 16 shots, like this is the kind of performance that you can come to expect from him. And he had some really big ones in this one. He had some timely baskets in key moments just to kind of stop momentum. So, yeah, gonna
Coulda gave
give
Pritchard-
Pritchard a shot.
They could have gave Pritchard the start tonight. They could have just went small.
No, they don't start him. No
I
matter
know.
who's out, they keep
but
him
it
off
just
the
to
bench. I
get
think
weird,
it's like, I think part of it is a continuity thing, and also it's
So
good
the
for his
six-man
six-man
race.
campaign. I don't know if Joe's
That's
considering
true.
that, but it is good for him.
That's true.
Yeah, helps out that he doesn't ever start.
Pritchard definitely deserving of the Brownie Award. Good job, Noah. You're starting to get the essence of the Brownie Award. Good job.
Can I go, Joe? Joe was awesome
Abs-
tonight.
Yeah, we'll let you go, Joe. As
Yeah,
long as
again, timeouts, the inbounds play that pretty much ended the game in the fourth. The lineups, the rotations, experimenting, get a little crazy. Ton of guys out, they win. I mean, that all stems from him. I think that's where he deserves the credit. And I said it during the game. We think of him, his head's in the stat sheet, Jimmy, and he's always looking at the analytics and the margins and all that. He's really on a dime, like challenges, timeouts, boom, 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 subs. Like his game management's underrated, I think, because everyone's thinking he's just watching the 3-point totals and, whatever else things that they're calculating analytically there. So good timeouts, good rotations. I love the Tatum adjustment, as I said earlier, that they've done for 5 games or so now. It was a great coach game by Joe against a team that's a little weird and tough to play against sometimes, even though they're bad. Damn.
Hey,
Grizzlies
it's
Suns,
tough.
149, 148.
Wow. I was gonna say it's tough being an NBA coach. We were just talking about it in our chat, Bobby. Like Nick Nurse might be might be in trouble. Tibbs, who knows how it's going to go with him? Like, it happens fast. So I'm sure Joe would be happy to know that he got the Brownie Award tonight. Because
I'll tell him on Friday.
yes, sometimes these coaches, they need a little pat in the back, because talk about fans turning quickly. Who's the first to go in any team? It's not the superstar. It's usually not even like the 10th guy. It's the head coach that goes first. So the Celtics don't have to worry about that right now. My Brownie Award is going to go to Derek White. I think if Tommy Heinsohn was still alive, rest in peace, the great Tommy Heinsohn, I think Derek White would probably lead the team in like Tommy points and Tommy awards. And the Brownie Award is similar. It's kind of like an ode to the Tommy Award. And I think Derek White deserves it tonight. A couple of huge blocks. We mentioned him off the top of the show in that second half, third quarter there. And then big shots in the fourth quarter to kind of keep Toronto at bay. So we have joyful Derek White back, and he gets the Brownie Award tonight. So even more reason to be happy.
That's his new nickname.
Joyful Derek White. That's going to do it for us, guys. We want to thank everyone for hanging out with us tonight. We know it was a off night type of game. They have another one tomorrow, so we appreciate the diehards sticking it out with us. I think
Any Raptors fans?
I didn't see any in the comments. It's a fall from grace from the Raptor faithful.
We used to be big with the Raptors fans.
They'll be back. They're watching Duke right now, Bobby. They've got their eyes on one player, and he's not currently on the Raptors. Talking about Cooper Flag. We'll see who ends up with the Cooper Flag race. But we are going to call it tomorrow. Are you guys going to be in Detroit?
We'll be right here on the Garden Report.
All right, cool. We're going to have a full cast tomorrow. I think John will be back. I think Sherrod will be back too. So you might have a full house. Should be fun. I'm going to hit the outro because Amit is in, where is he?
Indy.
He's in Indianapolis. So that's a good reminder too. Guys, we have coverage in Indy right now at the, whatchamacallit?
Combine.
What do you call it? What do you call it? The
Combine.
Combine. Thank you. Wow, I'm an idiot. Coverage at the Combine. Amit's there. We got the whole Patriots crew there. A lot of great interviews. They talked to Vrabel today, or the reporters talked to Vrabel today. So check out that. Bruins with an L tonight. Tough one. They lose to Toronto. They give up a goal late in the third, and they lose in overtime. We'll have to talk about the Bruins in overtime.
Huh? Well,
Toronto, yeah. It was Toronto tonight. Bruins are in a world of hurt. We do have some Bruins coverage too. So check out CLNS YouTube page for complete coverage of all your favorite sports teams. And the Red Sox might actually be worth talking about this year. So a lot of things to keep it locked on for. We're out. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Noah. Thank you, everybody else. We will see you guys tomorrow.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to feel that way.
Yeah.
Fly out over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke an hour early. We're not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke